Hello everybody and welcome back to another Dundee local history story. This week we are going back to the beginning of the 18th century, and if you've been following these videos for a while, you might remember from the story about Johnny Moore and his night out with the fairies that fairs were a really important part of the social calendar at that point in Dundee's history. And of course they attracted all sorts of shows and travelling entertainments. And one of the things that guaranteed you a big crowd at a fair was if you had a show featuring some exotic animals. And a man who made his living by doing this, touring round fairs, was a man called Abraham Sever. He was a Dutch showman, and he was in Dundee in the April of 1706, and he was touring a female Indian elephant around and showing her off to fascinated crowds at fairs. And this, I have to say, was not a good time to be an elephant in Britain. The people who imported animals to exhibit them rarely gave much thought to their needs, and they didn't really know much about the sort of lifestyles of these creatures. And they were just sort of treated as, working beasts. They had to walk long distances. The cold weather was not what suited them. And they often had very poor sort of nutrition and feeding as well. So the poor creatures often did not last very long once they found their way into life in the fairs. And this particular elephant, just to give you a bit of a window into her life, she had recently come from Edinburgh, where Sever had been exhibiting her. And he kept the elephant in a room above a baker's shop. And that is just no place for an elephant on so many levels. The baker was a man named Adam Kerr. He worked at Fish Market Close in Edinburgh, and he complained that he kept having his oven and shop premises damaged by all the dung and water that was seeping down from upstairs. And of course, imagine in a tiny room in a wee dark Edinburgh Close, that's not where an elephant should be either. So probably after a warning from the law about being a more considerate neighbour, Sever took his show on the road again and he headed for Dundee. And there weren't many transport options for an elephant in 18th century Scotland, so she probably did have to walk all the way there. And it was as they were approaching Dundee on what is now the Broughty Ferry Road, the poor, exhausted animal keeled over and she died by the side of the road there. Now, Sever was not sure what to do. He knew that burying the animal would be a long and expensive process. And he thought about how he was going to make the most of this unusual situation. And what he did was he got a certificate from the Dundee magistrates just to certify that the elephant had not been poorly treated. And then he decided to make an official gift of the dead elephant to the Provost of Dundee. And then the Provost of Dundee was very unsure what to do as well. He doesn't know what you do with a dead elephant either. It's a nice thought, but it's not even really a nice thought, is it? A live elephant would have been a really nice gift, but this is a completely different kettle of fish. So the Provost thought about it as well, and he thought, right, we can maybe turn this into an educational opportunity. So he got in touch with a man by the name of Dr. Patrick Blair. And Patrick Blair was originally from a wee place called Lethenday in Perthshire, but he'd been living in Dundee for a good few years by that point. And he had an excellent reputation as a surgeon and as an apothecary, a chemist and sort of medicine maker. And the Provost offered Blair the chance to undertake the first ever recorded dissection of an elephant, right there by the side of Broughty Ferry Road, at least in the beginning until the elephant was in more manageable pieces to be moved. So Patrick Blair accepted at once, and there was a team of expert butchers assembled to work under his direction and sort of get the elephant taken into pieces. And of course, the public nature of the first part of the dissection by the side of the road, this attracted a lot of crowds. And most of them were just wanting to see the spectacle for themselves in the way that they would when the elephant was at fairs. But there was a few who had less honourable motives. There was an incident where one of the elephant's feet was actually stolen away by a group of rogues. And it turned out that the tragic death of this elephant became a great opportunity for Patrick Blair's career and for scientific discovery. Because this was the only dissection of such an animal on record, the whole sort of scientific community was really keen to hear what Blair discovered. And as he dissected, he was sure to keep the skin as intact as possible. And he ended up with a full skeleton which he could mount and display, and also the skin could be stuffed to sort of display the body as well. And he made sure that sketches were made of all the internal organs too. And the skeleton and the body of the elephant were displayed in a place that Blair called his Hall of Rarities in Dundee. I'm not sure if there was much else in the hall apart from bits of a dead elephant, but it certainly sounds like quite a mysterious and fascinating place. And Blair also published lots of papers and his notes on the skeletons of elephants. And these kind of became really sort of landmark texts in elephant anatomy. And he became a Fellow of the Royal Society of London. So it looked like Patrick Blair's career was going really well and his fame was set. But of course, this was all going on at a very sort of tempestuous time in terms of politics too. Those of you that might have picked up on the date, 1706, so by the time the elephant is dissected and Blair is starting to publish his findings, you've got the Act of Union in 1707 between Scotland and Britain. And Patrick Blair's political sympathies were with the Jacobite claim on the Scottish throne and following 1707, the Jacobite claim on the British throne. And when the Jacobite troops mobilised for a rebellion in 1715, Patrick Blair went up with them as an army surgeon and he went to fight in the rebellion. And along with many of his fellow men, he was captured and sentenced to death. Now, it was probably his reputation as a doctor and a researcher that he built through his work on the elephant that ended up saving his life here, because his medical colleagues were involved in sort of rallying round and sending petitions for his reprieve. And eventually a pardon did come, but it was not until late on the night before his execution was scheduled in the morning. And one of the friends who visited him in jail around this time remembers him sort of pacing up and down the room, just hoping against hope that the reprieve was going to come in, and sort of saying, "They're taking this joke a bit too far." So after this, Blair decided to settle to a quiet life writing about medicine in England. And as for what became of the elephant after she had been dissected and written about and displayed, there was a Courier article that I found from 1912 saying that after the body had been exhibited, not wanting to waste anything, the elephant was eventually sort of ground down and used as fertilizer on local farms. So that is the story of what Dundee did with a dead elephant in 1706. And it's one of the many kind of animals of Dundee's past. We've got the whale, we've got penguins, and we also have this elephant kind of calling out to us from the depths of history. So that is the story for this week, and we will see you again next week. Thank you and bye.